Busy 24 hours for the Miami Dolphins, signing another addition to the linebacker room, bringing back a familiar face along the defensive line, and the contract restructure. All that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. Here on the Locked On Network, today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The Dolphins making some purchases in the last 24 hours. It was announced yesterday that the team was adding linebacker Willie Gay Jr. to an overhauled room, to say the least, when you consider the depth in the players and linebackers 2 and 3 and now 4 are going to be different than the players who were on the roster last year at the start of the season for 2024. So a dramatically overhauled room at linebacker. We're going to talk a little bit about Willie Gay and how he fits within this linebacker room. Benito Jones, it was announced this morning by the team, had re-signed with the team. So that is a defensive tackle in the boat. We got one in the boat, and that's a sorely needed transaction for the Dolphins with a very thin-looking defensive tackle group there at the start of the league calendar year. And then, of course, the moves don't get made without having enough salary cap space. And the Dolphins made their first significant contract restructure as far as the traditional restructuring of base salary and turning it into signing bonuses or guaranteed money in a lump sum version, reclassifying it as a bonus. Austin Jackson got his contract restructured, as pointed out this morning by Barry Jackson, courtesy of overthecap.com. So lots to get into. We're going to dive right in. And I want to start by talking about linebacker Willie Gay, who is a sixth-year player out of Mississippi State. And he was drafted 63rd overall by the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2020 NFL Draft. He just turned 27 years old in February. So this goes back to watching the defense down the stretch last year, seeing the state of affairs with the roster and how we tried to plug with veterans. And he came away from it. He said a couple of things. He said, man, we need young, hungry guys. And Willie Gay did his rookie contract in Kansas City, played 4 years there, ended up starting for the Chiefs, 47 games in 4 years for the Kansas City Chiefs, almost 12 starts a season. 8 as a rookie, and then 11, 13, and 15 for his first 4 years in the NFL, was a key piece for the Kansas City Chiefs defenses, and then signs a 1-year contract in New Orleans. And I'll tell you what, I just got done watching the tape. That's why the show's a little late today, because I wanted to watch as much tape as I possibly could on Willie Gay, because I know the numbers don't line up with what he was in Kansas City. I don't think the Saints had a single idea what to do with Willie Gay. And it showed as far as the implementation that they had for him as a player. He played in 15 games, Willie Gay did, and he started 8, but he played less than 300 snaps versus the last 2 years he was in Kansas City. He was over 600 snaps on the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs. So getting a guy who's coming off of a disappointing season in a spot that clearly wasn't a fit, but is young, 27 years old, young and hungry, is another box checked in that regard. But then the other thing was looking for, you watch the Dolphins defense down the stretch, and some of the older guys looked like older guys. And I came away from that saying, man, I'd really like to see, some more dynamic athletes. And that is the definition of Willie Gay as a player. Now, he came through the NFL Combine in 2020, and he was 6'1", 243 pounds. With over 32.5-inch arms. So from a size profile perspective, 6'1", 240 plus, okay length, has sufficient level length, but he ran a 4.46. That's 96th percentile for off-ball linebackers. And he jumped 39.5 inches. That's 93rd percentile. And he had a standing broad jump of over 11 feet 4 inches. That's 99th percentile for off-ball linebackers at the NFL Combine. The dynamic athleticism is very apparent when you watch him in space. And I think that's the biggest thing about Willie Gay that he didn't really get a chance to do in New Orleans last year. He spent more snaps on the line of scrimmage as an end man on line of scrimmage defender as a linebacker than he did off the ball. And that utilization for me didn't really make a lot of sense. And then you stop and you think about New Orleans and who did they have before it was Willie Gay? It was Zach Baun. And they didn't have a single idea what to do with Zach Baun. Zach Baun leaves, goes to play with Vic Fangio in Philadelphia, and he's an all-pro. And he gets a $17 million a year contract. I'm not saying that Willie Gay is going to be Zach Baun, but it's a good example of a player with that kind of build and good athleticism who has some flexibility and tweener versatility, but not ideal for like a true hybrid type of player. And, in the same ecosystem that it didn't work with Zach Baun, Willie Gay comes in after being an impactful player for Kansas City and just falls flat on his face. And when I go back and I watch Kansas City tape in 22 and 23 versus New Orleans tape in 2024, I see more of a player that's given the opportunity to let his athletic profile shine because he's a pursuit style player. You can pressure him from the second level, and obviously Steve Spagnuolo and that Kansas City Chiefs defense has a lot of pressure packages and blitzes and opportunities for guys to come from untraditional areas or get free runs coming through the second level of the defense and coming through interior gaps and creating chaos. And that's really what Willie Gay did a really good job of, I thought. And the other thing he did well was you put him away from the formational strength and let him play traditional will linebacker and just run stuff down and utilize 4.4 speed to be a pursuit, just an authentic pursuit player. So when I think about how that fits within the Dolphins, when you think about whether it was David Long or Anthony Walker or Tyrell Dodson, getting some obvious pass rush situations and passing situations, and Jordan Brooks is the guy that moved around and was on the line of scrimmage and was off the ball, was mugged up in gaps and was out in the hook curl areas, a player who's an overhang playing in the nickel, right? That's all the things that Jordan Brooks did a really good job of. But the other linebacker spot was a spot that was more of a, we're not really going to use you in coverage so much. We're going to use you to play forward and add on. And then that's how we run our simulated pressures, where we're going to rush you as a non-traditional player, and then one of our ends is going to drop out and play his own. I think that's where Willie Gay can make the most sense, because KJ Britt now is an early down hammer. He's a plug linebacker who plays downhill against the run and excels against the run. Tyrell Dodson's made plays in both phases, but is a little bit more of the Anthony Walker. And before Anthony Walker took that spot, it was David Long last year. That was how they used David Long in coverage, because David Long in pass coverage was catastrophically not good. And then Jordan Brooks is kind of the weapon that can do a little bit of everything depending on what you need and depending on the matchups you have. So that's where, for me, I think the appeal is for Willie Gay, in addition to early in Willie Gay's career, his rookie season, he played 240-something snaps on special teams. You're going to need a range. Think about Duke Riley. Like, Duke Riley was a rangy, athletic special teams linebacker. Willie Gay might be that for you this year, unless he catches lightning in a bottle and gets and earns a bigger role within the defense. But I don't look at what happened in New Orleans and say, yeah, he forgot how to play. I looked at how they used him and I said, why is this man living on the line of scrimmage? As a guy that doesn't have great length, is not really a point of attack style player. He doesn't really negotiate blocks all that well. He doesn't have great length to do that regardless. He is a pursuit backside player and an athlete who you can unlock in passing situations from where you line him up to where he ends up on any given play. So I really like, the 1 through 4 that the Dolphins now have with Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dodson, KJ Britt, and Willie Gay. I think it's a diverse group. I think it's an athletic, a good blend of athleticism with some guys and physicality with other guys. might be an identity room for you. And that's a win because it's not been a strength for quite some time. Now, these pieces all still have to click together, and you as the coaches have the responsibility of getting the right guys on the field at the right time. But I'll take it. I'll take Willie Gay as an addition, as your fourth linebacker in an overhaul linebacker room. And he'll be playing behind somebody who was here last year in Benito Jones, who signed a contract extension with the team that was announced, or I guess a new contract with the team was announced this morning. So we're getting into Benito Jones back with the Dolphins. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. So make sure you guys stick with us. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You can find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with the freelance expert you need to deliver incredible results. And with cost-effective growth, instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale any business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. The NCAA tournament is here, and if you spontaneously decide you want to go capture some magic and hope to experience a buzzer beater or root on your alma mater or whatever it is, getting tickets to the game shouldn't be stressful, and that's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. With Game Time's picks, they create and curate ticket buys that are easier to find from a value perspective, whether that's not just basketball, college basketball games, but sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You name it, and you get great peace of mind when you buy the tickets because you can get panoramic views from the seats before you commit and hit buy. There's all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees when you put the tickets into your cart, and you get a lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same row and section for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Benito Jones back in the saddle for the Dolphins, played just short of 500 total snaps for the team last year, 481 on defense, 13 on special teams, and that's off the heels of in Detroit, played just short of 700 total snaps for the Lions in 2023. Nose tackle player, 6'1", 335, is somebody who is low center of gravity, plug in the middle, graded fairly well for me, especially relative to expectation. Expectation being, when Benito Jones first came into the league, he started with Miami in 2020. And he didn't really hit. And then he went to Detroit. He spent 2 years in Detroit. And in 2023, became a starter for the Lions and played serviceably well, and then came back to Miami last year. And relative to Raekwon Davis, who was the prior incumbent at nose tackle, I thought you got a little bit more slipperiness with him. Now, you're not bringing Benito Jones in to serve as the pass rush guy opposite Zach Sealer. But Benito Jones is a really sturdy role player who probably qualifies as quality depth. I think he can be a sufficient level starter in a certain kind of role, but unless the Dolphins continue to add more defensive tackles to their ranks, Benito Jones may well be in line to play another 500 snaps for you this year. In a perfect world, that number is probably 150 snaps lower because you get into even front situations and you get a guy who's got a little bit more appeal from a pass rushing perspective while not sacrificing the anchor. And you maybe get a little bit more of a dynamic player, right? Benito Jones is he wins because he's low to the ground. He wins because he has a low surface area. He wins because he has a pleasant first step for a player that's playing in the 330s. But make no mistake that this is a sorely needed addition to just kind of know what you have. And I think what's interesting about the defensive tackle situation in Miami is that as you're following along with those in the know and the insiders and the beat writers that are talking about this edition, I know Marcel Louis-Jacques just kind of alluded to this, and he maybe said the quiet part out loud, and it's not a surprise. I know Omar Kelly's referred to it as well, but the Dolphins are hoping to retain Calais Campbell. Deshaun Hand is obviously gone. He signed in free agency with the LA Chargers. So Deshaun Hand is a part of the rotation, is out of the mix. But you have Zach Sealer. They're angling to get Calais Campbell back. They've now retained Benito Jones. That's 3/4 of your core 4 guys, and your 5th guy throughout the course of the year, no matter who it was, whether it was Neil Farrell or it was Brandon Peely. You remember the cup of coffee Brandon Peely had on the active roster or dressing on game day? And it lasted, 3 weeks? And then he was cut and went to Seattle, and he lasted a week, and he was cut out there. And it was like, all right, well, we got to know what we have here and what we don't have here. It becomes a lot more digestible projecting what it looks like if Calais Campbell is back. And it sounds like there's an effort from the Dolphins to get that done. They're waiting for him to make a decision. The challenge, of course, is the Dolphins was the team that Calais came to last year in hopes of having the successful postseason run, and it didn't happen, right? And then on the other side of the fence, where the grass might be greener, is the old stomping grounds. Baltimore is continuing to call out as the other team that's interested. So I think Miami, what they're going to have to do if they want to close Calais Campbell is I think they're probably going to have to be willing to bend on their price point. But based off of what's out there on the market, they may be wise to do so. And we're starting to get some of the finer details of some of the contracts that the Dolphins gave out in free agency to new players. And one that stood out to me was Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, the wide receiver, who signed a 2-year deal in Miami. They only gave out 1 3-year plus contract, and it was James Daniels, right? Everybody else is 2 years or less. And what stood out to me about the Nick Westbrook-Ikhine contract was they gave him a $2 million signing bonus, but they spread that signing bonus out across 5 seasons. So that was the only contract that I have seen thus far in free agency that the Dolphins put void years on the back of. Now, they did something with Austin Jackson's contract when they restructured that. We're going to talk about that in just a minute with void years. But if you're not familiar with void years, to just give you, I know everybody loves when I get in contract stuff. We're going to go very bottom level here. They're dummy years on the back end of a contract that serve as placeholders for bonuses that are paid out to diminish the commitment against the salary cap in each of the years that the player is under contract to play with the team. And the reason you can do that is because the first year that a player is no longer on the team or is no longer contracted to play for you, any and all future years worth of prorated money that was paid out into void years accelerates up into that year's salary cap as dead cap space for players that are no longer on the team. So Nick Westbrook-Ikhine getting void years is interesting to me because it is a voluntary surrendering of future years of cap space for a player that's not going to be under contract unless you agree to a new contract with that player. From a Dolphins and a cost perspective, what's the dollar amount you have to get to make Calais Campbell want to come play here again in lieu of going to Baltimore? The fact that he hasn't picked Baltimore already would seem to give you, unless he's choosing between Baltimore, Miami, and retirement, but that doesn't sound like it's the case. At least gives you some level of inclination that Miami's in the running. Now, if they don't get Calais Campbell, I think that's one of those free agency losses that you'd have to work extra to try to replace. But if you get him back, now that Benito Jones is in the boat, and you obviously have Zach Sealer, you have an opportunity to draft and add a defensive tackle. But I think a lot of your pressure is off to find a replacement for just Deshaun Hand from last year's team. I think that's a processable place to be. Now, if you don't get Calais Campbell, then yeah, it's going to be a primary need going into the draft. And ideally, you'll find a proper intersection of value and need at some point fairly early in the draft. But Benito Jones being back, not a small deal based off the snaps he took for you last year as a part of your defensive line rotation. Somebody that is not perfect. He's not a stalwart. He's not a game changer, but he's going to take snaps. He proved competency in the scheme last year, and I'll welcome that when the alternative is Matt Dickerson and Neil Farrell. Now, these moves getting done in part because of Austin Jackson. It's become apparent that the team restructured his contract. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
I saved the contract stuff for last because I know you guys love when I geek out on NFL contract details and fine print and dollar categorization and all this stuff, right? But here's what we know. Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald wrote a piece this morning outlining that overthecap.com had reflected that the Dolphins had restructured Austin Jackson's contract. And he was scheduled for approximately $10.9 million. I'm rounding. It's 10.88. $10.88 million in base salary was what he was due this year. Now, restructuring does not mean asking a player to take a pay cut. That's a different deal. That's what they did with Bradley Chubb. That's what they've done with Teron Armstead. That's a different kind of ballgame. There's no pay cut here. But you can convert the money from a base salary into a signing bonus with air quotes, or an option bonus in air quotes. There's some kind of bonus categorization for the money. And when you do that, it allows you to prorate whatever sum of money that you're taking and paying to the player by writing a check for and spread it out across up to 5 years of future years against the cap. This year and the following 4 years is a maximum amount. But here's the deal about Austin Jackson's contract as it existed before they restructured him. He was under contract for 25 and 26. And then he had 2 void years on the back end in 27 and 28. So it's a total of 4 years, 2 of which he's under contract, and then 2 dummy years on the back end. They've added an additional, according to overthecap.com, they have added an additional void year on the back end to spread out as much of his salary as they possibly could, to take as big of a salary as possible and then just leave what's equivalent to veteran minimum salary is what he's going to receive in weekly game checks, air quotes, this year. And the rest is a check that they're writing him to reclassify the money. By doing that, you can spread it out by up to 20% in each of the next 5 years against the cap. And by putting the void year on the back end of it, it allows them to save incrementally more money. The Dolphins free up almost $8 million in cap space. I actually think I have this for those of us who are watching on the YouTube channel. I believe I have my, from the offseason blueprint, the plan of what I would do to restructure. And the plan that I had presented did not involve adding a dummy year on the back, another dummy year on the back end. So if the Dolphins had just taken the base salary and restructured it and not added any additional years, they could have saved $7.3 million in cap space. By adding the dummy year, they save an extra $500,000 in cap space by kicking an extra void year on the back end of the deal. So they're saving $7.8 million in cap space. Why Austin Jackson? He was one of the bigger restructure potentials that you had from a base salary perspective on the team. He's coming into his age 26 season. He's going to turn 26 years old on May 17th. And if he stays on the field for you, based off the level of play that he's given you the last 2 seasons that he's been in the scheme, it's a very logical contract extension candidate for you in 2026 going into what would be a contract year. And if you extend the player and add more years, then all of your prorated money that's in multiple years worth of void years does not accelerate and hit on the same year. It can stay spaced out if you get a new deal done before the contract, quote unquote, voids. So this is a promising omen for Austin Jackson in the event that he plays well this year. He'll be a logical extension candidate because of the amount of money that they now have prorated into years in which he's not going to be on the team. This was like the Eagles were doing this with Jason Kelce as a late stage player at the end of his career. And then it got to the point where they would just add like a 1-year extension onto it to avoid taking monstrous amounts of dollars for him to not be on the team because of all the money he'd received in years past. Now, I'm not saying you get to that point with Austin Jackson, but I would much rather have void years and be incentivized to do a contract extension with a 26-year-old offensive tackle than a 35-year-old something. But that may be a ticket based off of Nick Westbrook-Ikhine getting void years on the back end of his contract extension or his new contract with the Dolphins, and the Dolphins being willing to utilize void years to add a new void year to the Austin Jackson contract. If you need to close Calais Campbell at a financial dollar amount that maybe gets you a little Joe Philbin queasy, you can utilize void years to achieve that. Now, you just have to be careful of not putting too much off where it's detrimental in 2026 to have Calais Campbell on the books for $2 million. But if you paid him $10 million, you'd carry like an $8.5 million dead cap hit in 2026 to not be on the team as a player that's pushing 40, right? Like, you don't want to do that. But it gives you the flexibility to get it signed, sealed, delivered if you're really intent on getting that contract done. So the Dolphins were more involved with void years last year, and understandably, they're kind of at a what or get off the pot time with this regime and this core and this nucleus of team. So you don't want to make the job too unattractive / simultaneously, you don't want to do the next aggressive build a disservice by being halfway in this year and doing so at a detriment of the flexibility you could have in 2026 if everybody's back. So like, it benefits you either way to not get too crazy with this stuff. But they've now shown for the first time some willingness to tap into those future year flexible cap tools that exist. So that's how the Dolphins get $7.8 million in cap space. That's how the Dolphins get Benito Jones back in the boat. That's why the Dolphins are adding a fourth linebacker. What comes next today, perhaps? Who knows? Scientists don't even know. But whatever it is, we're going to have you covered here on Locked On Dolphins. So come back and see us again soon. We got one more show this week, barring any emergency podcasts over the weekend. We're looking forward to whatever the day, the week, the rest of the month brings us. And we're going to start gearing up for the NFL draft here really soon. So hope to see you again. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here, Locked On Dolphins, your team every day.